Alright, welcome back to the channel everyone. So today we are finishing our stroll down memory lane by looking at the 7th round game from the Japan Chess Classic, which happened here in Kobe, Japan in 2023. This was my first FIDE rated event, and it's the tournament where I got my FIDE rating. And at this point in the tournament, I was sitting on 3 out of 6, so perfect 50-50 score. And I was really hoping to find a way to make the last game count positively, because then I would finish on a positive score, and I could only imagine that would be good for a FIDE rating. And so for our final boss for this tournament, we also had a really interesting opponent in Azumi Sakai. So she is a women's candidate monster, WCM, and she's part of like a chess couple. She and her husband often compete in different tournaments around the country. I think they live in Tokyo, but I've seen them here around the Kansai, Osaka, and Kobe area a few times in different tournaments. So I was really interested. This was the second game for the last day as well. So this was afternoon. At this point, everyone was probably a little bit tired. It's been about 3 or 4 days of play. And as I remember, actually, I think my opponent had gotten a little bit sick at this point. She was wearing a mask, so I think she wasn't feeling so good. So that counts in my favor, but it's very unfortunate, obviously, for any person to be sick when they're wanting to do something that they want to enjoy. So I was black for this game, and let's get into it then. Just make sure this works. Okay, so she played d4, and although I said I wanted to get a positive score out of the tournament, I gotta admit I was pretty done. I didn't really think too hard during the opening, and we're gonna see in a few seconds that that came back to bite me slightly. But I had tried really hard in the previous game, so I had just kind of like not had a lot left in the tank at this point in the tournament. So knight f6, c4, e6. I'm just kind of playing my normal setup, and then she went knight f3, and I realized, okay, I can't play a Nimzo, but no worries, because I was playing a Nimzo and a Bogo interchangeably, kind of regardless of what white plays, basically. So bishop b4 check, and now we're in the Bogo-Indian. Opening I quite like, to be honest. Also looking at it now, for instance, I play the Catalan a lot, so I faced this now and then. I've also faced some interesting transpositions from this into the Catalan once, just kind of, yeah, things happen, things happen on the board. So she blocks with her bishop, perfectly normal move, and I decide to go for the Nimzowitsch, where I place my queen on e7, and it connects to the bishop and keeps it safe. And just so if we're thinking about it, okay, well, what happens if they take, then I take, and in this case, I can trade queens if they block. I can take the b pawn potentially. I can also take the c pawn. So this is just considered not the best way for white to go, but it's not like super losing or anything like that. Okay, anyway, so after that, she played g3, and hang on, doesn't this look very much like a Catalan? So as you can see, we're kind of transposing. These days, I basically play white's position, but in this case, I didn't really know this yet. I didn't study the Catalan at all at this point in my life still, so I was just like, all right, she's probably going to fianchetto, let's move on. So I decide, okay, well, I can actually get a fianchetto in as well, because that knight's sitting in the way. So even if she puts out her bishop now, I can put up my bishop, and then I'm also on the diagonal. And in the Nimzo and the Bogo, I've always liked the move b7. I like fianchettoing my light square bishop and then trying to push the pawns in the middle of the board. So for me, this felt very normal, and as I said, I wasn't trying to think very hard. So she fianchettos, I fianchetto, and then she castles, and in this position now, the pin on the dark side bishop is done, so if I don't do anything, they can just take, and then there's no value for me. My queen is just sitting kind of out there for nothing. So I take the bishop off the board, and now we don't have dark square bishops. Fantastic. And white can decide if they want to take with their queen or with their knight, but either one is probably fine. Queen is the main move, though, and she does take with the queen. And here I have a decision to make. This game, I actually went through it and tried to place all my arrows beforehand, because I feel like sometimes I draw too many arrows. So tell me afterwards if you prefer the arrows to be on the board beforehand, or if you want me to draw them while I'm talking. Anyway, so in this position, I really have two main moves. I can castle, which is the main move. I can play d6, which is kind of the secondary main move. The d6 move is going to happen anyway after castling, and basically it's to get my other knight onto the d7 square, and from there it's going to help me push my pawns to e5, for instance, or it might even jump to c4 in certain situations. And castling is obviously just, you gotta get your king safe. I decided to play d6 first, And now white brings out the other knight, and I bring my knight out. And here they play d5, so we're still playing theory. This is still like a line, but I've kind of pushed us a little bit out of the mainstream by not castling it. But I could castle, and we'd probably kind of transpose to normal situations. So in this situation with white pushing their d-pawn, what they're getting at here is that they're actually making space for the other knight to come in, potentially even jump onto the c6 square at some point, which is going to be very tricky for me to get rid of, because I currently don't have a good piece to take there with, except for my bishop, and I'm not sure if I want to, because they'll take back with their pawn, and then their light square bishop is obviously just creating a massive battery down the long diagonal, defending the pawn there, so it could get kind of dicey for me. So the move I should be playing here is e5, just taking care of that square, just making sure that white can't get their knight in, and this is generally the way you want to play anyway. What I might do later on with my bishop is I might bring it back, and I might bring it out on the other diagonal. I might, move my rook out of the way first just to make sure it's safe. There are also versions where I can start pushing my h-pawn and just kind of try, or my a-pawn, sorry, and trying to open up the queen side. But anyway, I kind of fell asleep and I was like, oh yeah, right, I should castle. So I castled and I didn't play e5, and this allowed white to get their knight onto d4. So not a losing move, but strategically just a bit of a miss. It's something that I should be preventing because it gives them access to that c6 square, and that could be complicated for me. So when I realized that, I went like, okay. And now I didn't really want to play e5 now, because if I do, they can jump there anyway, and they can jump here and like hit my queen, and maybe they kind of come at me at the king side, and I'm just really uncomfortable with the whole situation. So instead of that whole situation, I decided I would just play a5 and just continue um, on the queen side. So in the Bogo, the pawn structure that I remembered that I want to try play is something like this, with a knight that can go to c5 maybe, and then from there you can try and figure out how you want to try and break into the position. But this is supposed to be kind of your fairly standard and stable pawn structure to go for. But I should have played e5 already, so now I don't really know if I want to play e5 anymore, so I decided just to play a5 in the meantime. And actually, I just remembered now, this kind of structure, I think I learned this from a hanging pawns video back in the day. Another channel, which I think I've mentioned before, whose content I've just super enjoyed while I was studying chess originally. I really like the guy as well. He seems really nice, although I've never met him. Okay, so I just play my a-pawn up, and here they decide to take, and this is obviously tricky now, right? They're hitting my knight, but they're also hitting my bishop, they're also hitting my pawn. So I decide, alright, cool, well, I've made the situation kind of bad, and I don't really know what to do, so I'll take the bishop, because if they take my bishop, they're also hitting the rook. At least now I'm also hitting their rook. They take my pawn with check, I decide to take with my queen, and they take my bishop with their king, also getting the king nice and kind of up, a little bit of luft potentially, and there's no real danger on the white long diagonal just now. I don't have any amazing checks that can do much just yet. I can also take the c-pawn, thankfully, but obviously this also opens up the c-file, so I'm thinking that actually I might end up having to play my knight to c4, c5 as intended anyway, to block the file when their rooks come onto the file anyway. So white pushes my queen away, I go, right, cool, I just turn back, gotta probably stay around my king, I guess. And actually the position felt kind of comfortable for me, so white has lost a little bit of their potential advantage from that knight d4 situation they got, but this is still pretty normal, and everyone's got a chance to win. I've got these two open files to play on, and half open files, and white's got these two half open files to play on, so there's stuff happening. Everyone's got a game. It's not the end of the world yet for anyone here. And so they decide they're going to come at me and actually hit this pawn at the back, and I go ahead and just push my knight up to c5. It's going to protect it, so white has to spend a move before they can actually kick it, so it's fairly stable, and in the meantime my queen is keeping my c-pawn safe. Alright, so they bring out the other rook, I bring out my rook, and as I said, these are my two half open files, so this is where I'm going to place my rooks. I'm not making any major plans, I'm not thinking about some super impressive strategy. I'm wondering if maybe I can jump a knight, like trade it off with theirs or something like that. That's really the extent of my amazing plan. So as I just said, they jump their knight back, they realize that they can't really hit my pawn anyway, and they centralize it, and I decide to jump my knight out and just hit a bunch of stuff. I'm hitting their queen, I'm hitting the knight, I'm hitting a pawn, I'm hitting another pawn as well, I guess. And in this position, there's really two ways that white can go, and I'll just show you the first one, which is they just take my knight, and I take my knight, and I'm still hitting the queen, and then they, like, put it up on the c file, hits my c pawn, maybe they can put some pressure there, and we're fine. However, what white decided to do was they were going to move their queen first, and now I have a tactic. I calculated some of it during the game, and I wasn't able to figure out exactly how some of the lines are supposed to finish, so it looked really dodgy for me. But the move here for black is taking the pawn. And I've already put the lines on here. My main threat is that I can take a rook, and if they take my queen, I can fork their king and their queen. So I don't know, let's say they fall asleep for some weird reason in this position. I take here, they take here, I take here, they move somewhere, I take, they take, I take, and I'm up an exchange, and I'm also up a pawn, I'm also up a pawn structure, I'm the only one with a rook. This is clearly very good for me. I think the engine says, yeah, like -6, 7 or something. Anyway, so this is what I should have done. Now, there's a few ways this could go, and this is why I struggled to find it. My first one was, okay, well, what if they just take here, and then I can take actually, and then I've got an idea to lift a rook and just put pressure on the back of their file there. The thing that was scaring me here also was like, oh, but can't they just something? And actually, no, they can't. They can't do much of anything. But I didn't calculate it properly. I was a little bit too tired. I also wondered, okay, well, what if they just like move their queen instead of like saving the rook? But then I can take, and I can still check their king, and then I can take, and this is apparently still very good for me. So I didn't think this was amazing for me, but I've got two exchanges. Well, no, I've got two exchanges. That's not how I say this. I have an exchange and a pawn and a rook for a queen, so it's apparently still really good, but I mean, this is the kind of position which I would never like play it on purpose. It's better. So the engine here says that's their best move, and it's like -2, but yeah, I would never like go for that on purpose. That looks like mega losing for me. If they decided to, where was it? If they decided to maybe like move their rook around, so I don't know, let's go this one. Maybe they defend the pawn in the middle. Then I can actually come out, which is really nice as well. I have an idea to drop my knight back again, which threatens to take the h-pawn with check, and then after so let's say I, for instance, do this. Oh, okay, hang on. I just did this. Let's give them a random move. So I go here, and I'm threatening this. They take here with check, I take here. They still can't really defend that pawn. And even if they can, I can come in this way and cause kind of considerable damage to them. Also, I have my rook on the F file, so yeah, this is very uncomfortable for my opponent. Anyway, this didn't happen either. So although I saw the tactic, I couldn't figure out if all of it was really winning. This position itself is like -2, so it's clearly winning at a serious master level. And for me, I basically looking at the lines, -2 means I'm going to win an exchange, but it looked really dicey. I was so worried about them taking my queen and not being able to take their queen, so I just didn't go for it. I just took their knight like I intended originally, and we moved on. So the game is back to just being kind of equal. So they take my knight, and I decide, haha, I can, do a knight jump, and they can hit me, and then after they move their queen up, actually, I was really surprised by this. The reason is I'm happy to trade, and I'm the one that's sitting with like a better pawn structure. So after I take, they've got two isolated pawns. That's on the side of the board where I've got my kind of like pawn majority. So that's not where you want to have your isolated pawns, right? Because they're clearly kind of outnumbered, and if I can find a way to move my pawns up eventually, then probably it's going to be pretty good for me. So I was a little bit unsure why white did this, and we didn't really discuss after the game too much, but I think their thinking was basically also like they're tired, maybe they're a little bit sick, and they just want the game to be over, and this position is completely equal. So maybe they just understood that they can keep this equal, and me being an untitled nobody without a FIDE rating just thought, whoa, isolated pawns, it's got to be amazing. Anyway, so now I can see I can jump around with my knight, and I can, pressure a pawn, and then I can pressure the rook, and I'm like, okay, hang on, let me just leave it on the c5 square at least. They can't push their pawn, and I can kind of figure out what I want to do here. So they decide to attack my c pawn. I can defend it, and maybe I can put some pressure on the f pawn. I don't really have a clear plan here, by the way. I'm just gonna like moving with tiny threats or potential ideas, and the game continues. We both still have a fair amount of time. We've both played kind of like a little bit too fast, I think. Probably back to the mentality situation. So I have no amazing plan, but I also don't think I have any big risk. So I'm just, moving kind of pieces in a circle, and, maybe they fall asleep or something. I drop back, I bring my other rook around, like I don't need to have both on that file, and I like the idea of moving this one or that one because the front one's already defending the c pawn, so I just leave it where it is. Okay, they come out, I go up, trying to protect this square a bit if they come in with something. Oh, hello, that was definitely not what I wanted to do, sorry about that. Okay, moving pieces in circles. I'm actually like moving my rooks in a circle basically. Okay, I try and stop them. They do come in anyway, and I go, okay, well, I don't really want to take because I don't want to reconnect your pawns to each other. So I'll just defend my rook with the other one. You can't really attack it twice, and if you move your other pawn, I can take your backwards pawn here. They attack my forward pawn here, and they've got some ideas, right? They probably want to jump something like this. I go, okay, cool, I can defend my pawn twice, so that seems safe. And then after they do the jump that I expected, I can actually go and attack their rook instead as well. So look, now everyone has a fork, but I get the fork first. So, I mean, they can fork, and then, hard to do. Maybe I would take here first, and they would take one, and then I would take one. Oh no, it's check. That's a disaster. Which way would I go if they went for it first? I mean, I guess that is basically the way I would do it. Oh, you know what? Sorry, what am I saying? I would probably just take the undefended piece, and then it doesn't really matter. Maybe they take this way. I'll just take back, and I'm just up a knight. Obviously not in actually like playing mode right now. Anyway, so I have the fork first. That's really the main point here. So that forces them to trade. I take back, and now there's no real like fork anymore. I'm also protecting from their knight jumping into this square, so they move their rook. And I decide, all right, cool, king up in the endgame, right? And again, my position feels like I have no actual worries. And again, the game is completely equal. All right, they kick my knight. I jump it around, bring my king in. They hit my pawn, so they've lifted their rook. They're trying to get it a bit more active. I, on the other hand, haven't really used my rook as an attacking piece, really. I've only really used my knight to attack. But their knight is a little bit out of the game, and they're trying to get the other rook a little bit more active. So anyway, pretty easy. And if you attack the other pawn, I can push the other pawn twice. And then, so if for instance you go here, I can do this. And then you can't come back to this square anyway. And if you go here, I can like stop you if I want to, I guess. So yeah, it seemed like a pretty easy move for me to counter. Anyway, they decide to bring their knight in, attacking my rook. I put my rook over on this c pawn. I'm wondering if I can find a way to attack it maybe in the long run. It's also just hitting the knight right now, right? So they check me, I move my king back. And this is also kind of what I was hoping to do. So currently they can bring their rook over and down, right? But I also have a square to do that. And I want my king to be on this side. Maybe it can help defend the backwards pawn, and then I can use both my pieces to attack. Maybe I can get one of those isolated pawns off the board or something. I didn't see my king really doing much on this side with these two pawns. They aren't under immense pressure. I can move them, and I feel like my king is kind of just out of the way. I need it to be stable and steady at the base of the pawn chain instead of just sitting in the corner hiding behind the two pawns. So they attack my rook, I move it back, and they come in, and actually now we're both on these open files, right? So it could be that they want to infiltrate my position. I bring my knight out, happy to trade. If we do, I think it's just easier for me to start walking my king in. And they say, okay, no trade, and I decide, all right, cool, I'll hit your, I'll hit your rook here. And actually, what I saw is that I can hit your rook, and um, then I can go and hit the pawn from the back, the isolated pawn, and then they probably won't be able to defend the pawn twice. So they might be able to jump it once, but then I can move my rook over and try and get it, and actually get the pawn. And if I can get the pawn off the board, I'm probably winning, right? So for me, this is pretty good. Anyway, they come in with their rook, and I go, all right, cool, like, let's trade again. If all the pieces come off the board, probably I'm winning, or at least it's a draw, but I feel like I have better chances because of the isolated pawns. Because, here I can definitely make a passer, whereas whereas white needs to make a passer in the middle, but I actually have enough pawns to take a little bit, so I think it will be easier for me to do. Could be wrong, but that's how it felt. Anyway, I say, hey, we can trade, no worries. They say no, and here you can kind of see what my plan kind of has been. Now, I'm happy to keep my rook at the back if their rook is there, because it protects all the pawns, and I can start moving my king up maybe in the future. So one of my pieces gets active, whereas white's king is just sitting in their corner. And my knight is still active and able to hit one of those isolated pawns. So even if they could defend the pawn with their knight, for instance, which they can't because it's right next to each other over here, then I could be moving my king up and eventually just take it. So actually, after white played this move, I'm now winning. Um, I don't know at the time if I'm specifically winning, but the whole time I've kind of felt like, hey, maybe there's a chance, so, move my pieces. But according to the engine, I'm actually also winning. It's almost like -3. Alright, so I attack the pawn. They kind of run over. I go, thank you very much for this pawn. And now I know I have an advantage I can push. I've got pawns that can move around. I'm also hitting the A pawn on the side for them, right? So these two isolated pawns are connected in an L shape. They defend it. I move up, and a really nice move here. Well, actually, it's both ways, right? This allows my rook to continue defending the base of my pawns at the back on both sides. Because their rook is in on my side, I'm happy for the rook to just do that, because their rook has nothing else that it can do then. It's basically cancelling it out. And with this move, I also attack the knight, which has to move, and then I can take the pawn. So they hit me with the check. I go, no worries, I can hit your pawn. I can hit your rook, and now I'm hitting your pawn and your rook, so this is good for me. And actually, my advantage is growing. It's actually -5 now, so I'm really getting somewhere. I might actually be able to win this. They come back to the open file, and I take the last pawn, and in the cartoons where you'd like see the money sign, I'm just seeing like the forward pushing pawn sides now. I've got 3 connected and uncontested passes, all on the same side of the board, with my king way at the back, which is helping to keep these squares safe, so their rook can't do anything. My rook is keeping the base of my pawn safe as well, and I still have a knight that can be running around in the front if I need to. So I know I'm winning at this point. I just have to be able to convert it. If you don't know you're winning at this point, well, actually sometimes you aren't, because the engine finds some ridiculous line, but I was pretty sure I was doing well. So now white says, okay, cool, you've got passes, I got to make some passes too. They start pushing on the other side of the board. So here I go, I push, and I push. And as I said, remember that my king was keeping this safe, so their rook couldn't do anything. And then as soon as their rook moves, I can also start moving my king up. So I bring my knight back first. I'm very happy to do this kind of, story, and just expand all my pieces to that side of the board. I'm actually wondering if I can keep their rook out of the game completely, depending on how I move my pieces. They bring their rook back, I bring my rook up, my king up, they knight. And so here I didn't want to jump, and then they jump in here because I felt like there might be some complications. I mean, obviously they're also hitting my knight, right? So if they do this, then... Okay, now I'm just kind of giving some of my advantage away. You shouldn't do that. But I didn't really want to complicate my situation too much, so I just jumped my knight out to the other side, and now I can push any of the pawns and nothing hangs, and my king is still there to move in. And my rook is still doing the same job it was doing at the start, defending the backwards pawn on the side, and if it needs to come around, it can still do that. Super happy not to move my rook off the back here. They do come back in. Thank goodness I didn't try and move my rook around right. Okay, here we go with the pawns. and they go forward, I go forward. I know if they try and get me here, I can just move my rook in front of my king and just, that's their problem. If they come for the other pawn, I can move my king up. And I have a way to get in here if I need to, right? And if my king is in front of the pawns, it's still going to be okay as well. So now they're starting to run their king over. They know that they can't get there in time. Or they can't just try and push on their side of the board. It's not going to work. My knight also, sorry, I maybe didn't explain this, but I actually only just remembered this now. Part of this move that I liked as well, that was defending these squares. So if they started pushing their pawns, I could maybe get some pressure on some of them. So it complicated their situation and eased mine because it opened up the files a bit more. So up and up, jump my king in, jump my king in, and I'm just moving. And as soon as they move their king away from the backwards f pawn, I attack it, and if they move it, I get the e pawn. So unfortunately, at this point, I think white just has absolutely no way to win, and it's just for me to make sure that I can convert this position. And I'm really happy with a move like this, right? I'm clearly winning. I don't know if I was actually thinking about this, but it's one of those places where you're clearly winning on one side of the board, and then you go and win on the other side of the board as well, so that your opponent just has no counterplay. So I'm super happy for this jump move as well. I'm attacking the f pawn. The e pawn would be undefended if it moves. My rook is still doing the job it needed to do. I'm very happy with that. And my king has got all the pawns right around it. So if they move their rook, for instance, I can play c2 and fork the king and their knight, and then it's just down another piece. So they decided at this point that they're going to sack for at least one pawn, and then they hit my king, but I can kind of just run my king around. So just run my king around, and after they attack my c pawn, I take the f pawn. And here I also know that I can take here then if they start to take with their king, for instance. So if they do this, I think my main move was probably just I was going to attack here, and I can also take here, and even if they take my h pawn, I will have, 2, 3 other pawns as well, and I'll also be behind their passed pawn. Given that their king has come in trouble here, I might even be able to find some way to check them into a really bad position. So instead what they did is they brought their rook back. They're still trying to defend, and I can still take the pawn, so really good. And I also didn't lose my c pawn. Alright, they attack my knight, they jump it over, they push my king around, I go, cool, I'm just sitting behind my c pawn. And in this position, after I check them, they have to go back to the back file. I check them again, and now my pawn is protecting my rook, so my knight is also free to move over here. And here, my opponent finally reached over to the clock, stopped it, and resigned. So actually in this position, it's already mate in 4, and if I get a move in, it's either going to be this fork or even this check. Both of them lead to mate in 2, so completely crashing by the end. But if you look at the analysis here, so you'll see out of the opening, white was doing fine, and as a Catalan player nowadays, I know like you just have like +2, +7, +5, like it's just a game, and then very quickly in the Catalan it's like 0 0 0 0 0, and I'm like, what am I doing? Anyway, and then there's that one spike where I had the knight takes f2, which I couldn't figure out sufficiently, and it was too scary to lose my queen and not be able to take theirs and things like that, so I didn't do it. So I went back to just a long situation of trading and moving our pieces around in circles. And really when white tried to infiltrate with their rook is where I got the advantage. So if around here it was still equal, and then maybe it's like -1, like minus -0.5 or something now. And as soon as they infiltrated with their rook, I get the advantage. Actually, ironically here, what they should have done is they should have just taken and just kind of played like this, and I'd have to run my king in, but actually they're still doing fine. Which is funny for me because I thought this would be winning, but again, it's tricky. So probably on the board, it's easier for me to try and win, whereas white would mostly try and defend in this position, but it's actually equal. I'm not lying. Yeah, it's like minus 0.7 or something like that. It's slightly better for me clearly, but white is not losing. So after that though, they did infiltrate, and then the big jump here after they decided to get all the way into my back rank, which you would think would be scary, but the way that the pawns have been set up, and thankfully keeping my rook where it was, I was able to keep everything stable. And actually white, by infiltrating their rook, kind of made it useless. There's not enough space at the back, and there's not enough targets for it to be hitting. So that's how it went. And so what is it? 72 moves later, I got it. So with this, I finished on what's it? 4 out of 7. So I was, yeah, because I was on 3 out of 6 pivots. So 4 out of 7. I was really, really happy. I actually want to show you quickly. Let's see. I don't know if this will actually show properly. Give me 1 second. Let me just open up and see what kind of view you would have. A very pointless view. What if I do this? No. Okay, that's my opponent. That doesn't help much. Alright, I'm just going to read the information for you instead. So, if I go to my name here, after my competition, maybe there's a way for me to just make this a bit better. Let me go down. I can't go down. What if I zoom in? Can you see this? No. This is not going... Okay, well, this is good enough. This is good enough. So this is my results for the tournament. You can see that I played... this is the FIDE ratings on the side here, going from 1917. This is all FIDE ratings. These ones here, rating international. And you can see I played 1929 my first round and was able to get that lucky draw. And then I lost and won against 1817s. I beat another 17. I lost against another almost 19. And then at the end here, I beat this almost 1800 rated player. So I was super happy with the result. And actually, my opening FIDE rating was really, really strong because of it. So I just have to go double check exactly what it was. So I'm not lying to you. But I think it was about 1880 or something like that. So my FIDE rating was way higher than I expected. And I was really, really happy with it. Okay, now the FIDE rating page isn't loading. That's not good news. Here we go. My starting rating was... unclear. Yeah, 18 something. 5 years. I have to go further back. Oh, I can't. All years. Alright, it doesn't really help. Anyway, it was 1820 or something. So this, it shows it like jumped a bit at some point. But anyway, so I got a FIDE rating which I was super happy about. And that's why the tournament is such a happy memory for me. Also because I got to kind of beat my final boss in the final round and get a positive score. Because I'd put in a lot of effort to prepare before this tournament. I've since learned a few things like don't try and over prep and don't try and force theory, just play the position and play good moves. But anyway, it was a great result and I was super happy. So thank you very much for joining for this little walk down memory lane, and I hope that you also, if you don't have already a FIDE rating, can get a FIDE rating in a really enjoyable tournament. Even if I didn't do well, I have to say this tournament was super nice. The playing halls were fantastic. I really enjoyed the atmosphere. There was a lot of competitors from overseas and locally, so it was an interesting crowd, and I got to meet a lot of interesting people and see some of the people I know. So yeah, all over it was just a really, really nice experience. But of course, getting a positive score for the tournament and a good result on my first rating made me super happy as well. Alright, and that's it. So thank you very much for joining, and see you guys next time. Ciao.